Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Mark Isaac Potter Presents. This is show number 2 with the lovely Dan Slyker, who is a country singer, a country songwriter. And Dan, there was something you wanted to start us off with on this show number 2. What was that?
One of the questions we talked about was how I got into country music, and it's kind of like a story with a big interruption in the middle of it.
Like
Um,
aliens came down and no, I'm kidding.
almost. Aliens called the Fab Four. Um, but but
Whoa! Ooh.
but my parents took me to Disney World when I was really little, and my one of my first like home movies is me dancing with the bears um, from
Okay.
Country Bear Jamboree, and I loved Country Bear Jamboree so much. It was for people unfamiliar, it's kind of like what we're going to talk about later with my latest album. It's kind of like a show where there's jokes and stuff, and there's musical numbers, and it's like a variety show, but it's all done with animatronic, wild
Okay.
animals, mostly bears, but some moose and stuff in
And
there
that's part of
also.
Disney World or what?
It's part of Disney World. You go in there and you go in and watch the show, and I just loved it. And I loved it so much. My parents got me the LP for it, and I
Okay.
played that. It was one of my first records, and then I was
How
living
old
in.
were you at that time?
I think I was 2 or 3.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So you
So
got
yeah,
into
what?
music early. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I my first kind of music I liked was country music. I love the stories and stuff like that. And my parents got me Shel Silverstein poetry books, and I loved all those. Those were
Nice.
like stories, and like Charlie Daniels and Kenny Rogers and Johnny Cash were like I loved all those stories. So that was the kind of the music I really liked. And then I finally that was like up until I was like 9 or 10, probably 9, yeah, 9. I found my parents like record albums, and they had like Creedence and they had Beatles, and so I really got into that music too. And then I started listening to all sorts of stuff, and then country music kind of took a turn. It kind of became uh, I don't know. People kind of laughed at the caricature nature of like a stereotypical country person, and they started imitating that. And then there was like this country boom because of Urban Cowboy John Travolta. That and then country be kind of became big, and it was really on the radio a lot, and so people try to like latch onto that as a way to be commercially successful. And so country music, I
Okay.
think, after that peak started becoming like a caricature of itself. Like the Garth stuff
Okay.
in the '90s is really good, but then it started getting to be like a joke, and so I kind of like drifted away from it for a long
Okay.
time.
Okay.
So that's kind of like the early part of the story. So
Okay.
fast forward to 2020. I have a dream, and in my dream, there's a song playing. It's the song is I was like on vacation, and there's like a band at the pool, and the band was singing, "Guess I'm headed to Mexico. Pretty little thing said she
Oh
wanted to
yes.
go."
Yeah.
And
I
then blah 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 to Mexico.
yeah.
Whoa
Yeah.
whoa. And that's how the song was going. I couldn't. I spent the time, when you're kind of dreaming and you're trying to like, you're dreaming, so you're trying to like stay in your dream.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
I tried to stay in the dream to figure out that third line, but I couldn't do it. So I just woke up and I went to the other room. I recorded it immediately. It was really tired. It was groggy and everything. And so I'm
Okay.
like, I'm gonna finish the song. So in 2020, there was this thing going on where I was unemployed because of the shutdown and everything. And so I had plenty of time to like, well, I'll just make a country song out of this because it was a country song in my dream.
Yeah.
And it ended up being the song Mexico, and I really loved it. And I sent it away to some Nashville people, and they said, "Well,
Yeah.
keep writing songs and keep sending them to us." And so I did. I wrote 6 songs, and that became the EP 808s and Fishing Lakes.
Okay.
I tried to get big country artists to buy to record them, but that just didn't work out. I didn't have the right connection, so I said, "Well, I'll just release it on my own because you can do that nowadays." And so
Yeah.
that's kind of how I got started, restarted in the country music, and then playing a lot of country music at Howl at the Moon got me kind of liking some of the newer country songs. So I'm kind of like I took a big hiatus while country kind of like be kind of worked out its kinks, and now I'm back. So
Well said. And by the way, folks, I have watched the video for the song Mexico, at least 3 times anyway. And what Dan is not telling you is you want to tell it or you want me to tell it? it's,
go ahead. You go
it's,
ahead and
it's,
I'll come in.
it's, what was that? What was the movie? What was the Barbie doll movie called?
I think it was just called the Barbie movie, right?
Could be. Anyway, it's Barbie dolls. It's Barbie and Ken and all their friends. And the song is hilarious. He says, I can't resist long legs. And this woman wants to go to Mexico, take him to Mexico, take her to Mexico. And they go, and the bartender somewhere says, who's taking you to Mexico this week?
Yeah, so the guy gets scammed. He falls for it. He just
Oh,
yeah.
I
So
love
anyway,
this song. It really
it's a
does.
great story. And then the album had come out like in March, and people were like in the story and everything. But like, so I wanted to tell is the kind of I like for story songs. It's kind of good to have a video to match with it, so people can kind of
Yeah.
follow along a little bit better. And so the Barbie movie was coming out in a couple months, and everyone was talking about it. It was going to be the hugest thing. I'm like, well, instead of hiring actors, I could just act it out with the Barbies, and
It was
it
fun.
ended up it ended up being pretty funny. I'm pretty
Yeah.
happy with how it came out.
I bet it was popular too. Have you gotten a lot of hits and stuff or what?
I guess about 2,000 hits on YouTube or so.
Okay.
So
Good.
it kind of got around because of
All
I
right.
would tag it with hashtag Barbie, and people who like the movie would kind of get on board and stuff like that. But yeah, so that was the first song that came to me in a dream, and I ended up just I haven't stopped since. I have 16 songs that I've written since then, um,
Wow. Very
in the
good.
country vein. Yeah, and I got a whole bunch more in the tank that I'm constantly coming up with ideas. So
Good. I I have several things I want to say to you about the show, about this production we're doing today. I don't know whether to say them all here, but one of them is I may perhaps have found a way to get you more views and get other people more views than I usually do. I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to try it on your first show and see if I can get a lot more views than we usually do. But it's going to take time because first the show has to go to the editor, and then I got to do this, and then I got to do that. And so it will be a while, but still, we're going to try to do that. So, um,
well, I'm not going anywhere. So
yeah. So just tell us more about any part of your musical existence that you want to tell us. I'm fascinated with you. As you know, your mom and I have known each other for I won't say 2,000 years because she's not 2,000 years old, but I am. I grew up with Abraham Lincoln's father, so uh, yeah. Just tell us anything you want, or I'll go back. I can go back to the interview questions and see what they have to say. I'm sure we got tons of interview questions in here. You have
well,
anything you
one
want
thing
to tell us off the top of your head? Like, what have I not asked you that you would like to tell us?
one thing we teased at the end of the last show is the new album, Sellouts and Train Tracks, how it's kind of a combination of a couple different things.
Oh, yeah, let's do that. Yeah. There's an article, folks, ladies and gentlemen, in Rattle magazine about Dan and his newest album. And it tells us very beautifully that Dan and his style are something relatively new in country music, rather. And he has a lot of throwback things that are heartwarming and familiar. And this is like one of the several new niches within country music. And uh, I, I, I may or may not have that actually pulled up, but the guy Josh Rice, what was his name, or Ross? Jack Ross,
Jack Rush.
Jack Rush. Yeah, he
Hmm.
said, it's new, it's fresh, it's taking a different direction. You, of course, on your album, you have instruments that are not normally in country music. Tell us about that. How do you see yourself as someone who's kind of breaking through a different niche, or you don't really see yourself that way?
Well, the the EP 808s and Fishing Lakes is like a play on a Kanye West album called 808s and Heartbreak. It's like a play on words from that. 808 is like a drum machine that like a lot of hip hop artists use, but it's infused itself into mainstream and even in the country. So what I did is I first was sort of making fun of that by putting a bunch of 808 drum machines in my songs on the first album. And
Right,
but I ended up really liking the songs, and it ended up being an interesting mix of things. So in this next album, I had written some songs that are more pop and some songs that are more rock, like Southern rock, and some that were more traditional. And so I didn't know how to put them all into one album and have it sound like it all belonged together. So
right,
I could have put out a couple different EPs, some shorter albums, but I figured if I could have like a show where there's two different bands, I can call the first band the Sellouts and the second one who does more traditional stuff with mandolins and fiddles, the Train Tracks. I can have them both on the same show, and like I could do a country bear jamboree hee haw kind of thing from my childhood, and it would be kind of
right.
fun. I did all the voices for all the hosts and all the guests and everything like
You
that.
did all those voices?
Yeah, that was me. All different variations of me.
Are you serious?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
And the voices are
Oh,
cool.
a whole bunch of people. Gee
Uh,
whiz.
the voices are a cool dedication to if just to get off on a sidetrack. The host is Mordecai O'Shea. He goes by Morty, and then there's Bixby who goes by Bix, and there's Bray, who's the sort of like a donkey kind of character. He talks
Right,
really low, and one of their products that they're pushing is Buck's Balm to rub on yourself.
right,
And
right.
so at the end of a Dr. Seuss thing called a book called All the Places You'll Go, it says whether your name be um, Bucksbaum, Bixby, or Bray, or Mordecai, Olivan, Alan O'Shea, you're off to great places, you're off and away. And so that was like a little dedication to my Dr. Seuss upbringing. Um,
I didn't read Dr. Seuss, but
Yeah, that's a little aside to that. But anyway, back to the
okay.
album. Um, so it starts out with this band that's more modern or whatever, and they use the 808 drum machine on one of the songs, and the crowd doesn't like it. And then they introduce like the more traditional band, and everyone gets into it. So that's kind of like a concept album. Like I said before, I'm not famous enough to do a concept album, but I just wanted to do it for myself.
Right.
A lot of shout outs to friends and family members and some of my influences and things like that. That I enjoy putting it in there. Um, my daughter took karate for a while, and one of the senseis at her dojo was Sensei Allison. I thought that was like a funny juxtaposition of traditional senseis and a name that you wouldn't really associate with a karate expert.
Right, right,
There's
right.
not many people fearing Allisons beating their butt in an alley somewhere. So that's one of the references I put in there. But there's several just things that they basically just amuse me. I've kind of like I've made it so specific that I'm the only one who really loves the album, I think. But maybe we'll get
Well,
some other people
I liked
find
it
some
a
other
lot,
people
and
who
I'm
do as
sure
well.
others will. So yeah, yeah, very cool. All right. So anything else you want to say in particular about this? You're not giving it a name. I know that this new niche within
Oh
country
yeah,
music.
we can
Do
talk about
you
that.
what do you think? How would you define the niche in the first place? How is it different and similar to existing country music? And who do you think is that audience? Is it Gen Z, Gen A, Gen Y, Gen Grapefruit, whatever the different generations are, or
I'm
what?
not really sure what the letters are, but I'll just say younger people now are kind of the ones who are saving it. Um, So I talked about country music kind of past that John Travolta era, Eddie Rabbitt, Kenny Rogers, Charlie Daniels. They were kind of like the last people doing country music before it became like mainstream and people started having country music radio stations that were like in more places than they were before. And so then it kind of got, in the 90s, Garth Brooks was really solid, had some really good traditional stuff. There's some really
Right.
good stuff out
Right.
there. But then
Yeah.
I think as soon as Achy Breaky Heart came out, I think people started to see it as like a novelty train that they could ride. And if they just like pretended to like, wear all the cowboy hats and like, sprayed their hair right and like did all like the I don't know. It just kind of became the music just became really simple. People just wanted to crank it out just to try to like. I think it got really bad in my opinion,
Well, and you
in that
said it became
period.
a caricature of itself too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so people were just writing songs about it. It seemed like a checklist. It was like a Mad Libs thing. It was like, oh, I'm going down to the riverside. I'm gonna get
Right.
drink this beer. I'm gonna see
Right.
this
Right.
girl,
Right.
and it just
Right.
became like so unoriginal. And
Yes.
so there's this new crop of people who've come out. Tyler Childers, Zach Bryan, Noah Kahan, who are more folky and they're more rootsy. And this younger generation has really grasped onto that. And so every young generation will try to rebel against the previous one. And I think this is one of the better ones because I equate it to when rock music got into the hair metal era where everyone was hairsprayed and lipsticked and singing about immature partying kind of things. Um,
Yeah.
the grunge movement kind of came along and crushed that and said, "Hey,
Yeah.
like that's silly. Let's just rock out again." I
Yeah.
think this is sort of a similar thing where these new folkier artists are really they've emerged for sure. It's not a matter of if they will, they have taken over, and it's really cool. And that's kind of like what the album is mirroring. It's like a microcosm of that.
What did you think of the CMAs this year?
I didn't really watch because, to be honest, I don't really like any award shows. Um,
Okay.
it just seems like I don't know. It just seems like it's celebrating the wrong thing. Like, there's no winners in art, in my opinion. Like everyone who, if you put out a song and you think it's the best song in the world, that's your personal opinion. But it's not up for like anyone else to kind of decide, you know, who
Right.
does what, and what's the best kind of art. It's just I just kind of disagree with that. It sounds like a little bit snooty to say that, or whatever, but I just
No, we're
personally don't
not. I
like
mean, it
the
sounds more
award
down
shows
to
and stuff.
earth to me, but I want to get a better handle on some of these new people. Do you remember a guy, and I didn't look him up, I wouldn't have even known where to look now, but he came out with a song, his first song, oh, maybe 6, 8 months ago, and he has a big red beard. And it was a political song,
Yep.
and it really did something. What that kind of phenomenon. See, I grew up with this stuff, man. I grew up with, like I said in the first show, Porter Wagner and Johnny Carson and Waylon Jennings and who was that more slick guy on Hee Haw that Buck Owens,
Buck Owens and Roy Clark, yeah.
Roy Clark, and all those guys. Just who what do you think about some of these grittier people like this guy with the red beard? I think he's got another song out now, but his first song was really heartwarming. It was about working class people. Can you say
Yep.
anything about that? Do you remember his name or anything or what?
I don't remember his name, but I remember so streaming I guess sometime in the 2000s, late 2000s, maybe 2010 or so. It
Yeah.
was early 2010s actually. YouTube started counting toward the charts. Where it never did before. And before that,
Okay.
streaming never counted to the charts until it did. That was in the
Okay.
2000s.
Okay.
So this guy puts out this video, and it clicks with a certain like part of the population,
Right.
and it spreads and it spreads. They're sharing it. You got to hear what this guy's saying, and that song was all
Right.
about the words, and it had so many views on YouTube that it actually charted at number one on the charts. And
Wow.
so that's just like and then it was gone the next day because once people had seen it, it didn't have any sustained like thing because of
Right.
like
Right.
there was like a tour going on or like a record
Well,
that
and
they could
it
buy.
was political too, and they don't last
Hmm.
too long. So,
Yeah,
but
and so
yeah,
it was just kind of like the nature of like an unsigned artist. If someone does flash like that, they don't have a record deal or anything, and it'll go right back down. Now, if he got signed and he has a new album out, he's got a chance to have some more success for that.
yeah,
But an interesting story, if you haven't heard his, is one of the guys I mentioned earlier, Zach Bryan. he was in the military, and he would just play his guitar, and he had this old style, just him and a guitar. His first anyway, he would just play for his friends, and his friends would video him, and they put up YouTube videos of him, and they said, you gotta do this, you gotta quit I think it was in the army. He's like, you gotta quit, and you gotta be a full-time singer. He's like, oh, I don't know about that. And so they put his videos up. And he became a viral sensation. Everyone just loved his songs because they were so heartfelt and they were so rootsy. And um,
Right.
these record companies were offering him deals or whatever, and the military gave him an honorable discharge and said, "Hey, yeah, you got something big ahead of yourself. Go out." And now
Oh, how
now he
cool.
sells out stadiums around the world. He sells out stadiums in Australia, in the United
Oh,
States, and everywhere. And so
okay.
and he got it from a really earnest place. His first album is just him and an acoustic guitar. There's no other instruments. There's no computers tuning his voice. It's just that, and it's real raw, and it's really good. And he's one of those people who just he's one of the pioneers of the new resurgence of traditional folk and country music.
You should do a podcast. No, you know what's his name again?
Zach Bryan.
Zach Bryan. Okay.
Hmm.
All
And he was
right.
even going up against there was an established country star called Zach Brown right before him, and there was a
Oh,
Luke Bryan. And so for him to come
oh
out and use
gee.
this for him to come
Still,
out and use his real name as Zach Bryan, he's like a combination of those two. It might have caused confusion. It might have caused like some fancy agent to say, "No, you got to change your name so there's no confusion." He was just like, "No, this is me," and he became more famous than both of them right now.
yes, that's amazing. Of all the other people in country from back in the trying to figure out how old you are, I have no idea, but back in the 50s and 60s, who did you like the most, or who were like the top two or three? Now I've
Well,
messed up my. Go ahead.
I loved the story songs. So Charlie Daniels, I had that
Okay.
album with Devil Went Down to Georgia on it. That was one of the best
All right.
story songs ever. I
Right.
loved Kenny Rogers. I had Kenny Rogers albums for my mom.
Right.
Um, and I loved the story of Ruby. I loved Coward of the County was one of my favorite ones. I still cry when I hear that song. Um,
Oh, wow.
Johnny Cash, I love Shel Silverstein. So then I heard, Shel Silverstein actually was the poet. He wrote Boy Named Sue. So I like that. I like those kind of things. So
Right.
those are the artists. And Eddie Rabbitt was on the radio when I was younger, and I loved a couple
Oh,
of his songs. That was part of that urban cowboy surge when country music was actually on the radio for a little bit. And
okay. All right.
Barry Gibb was writing country songs instead of songs for the Bee Gees.
Barry Gibb, huh? Oh boy.
Yeah, he wrote "Islands in the
That
Stream" for Kenny Rogers and
I
Dolly
didn't
Parton.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God. All right. Well, we're getting close to the end, but I'm gonna we're gonna wrap up for today. But I'm gonna encourage Mr. Slyker to be on the show every 4 to 6 weeks, something like that. Ladies and
Hey,
gentlemen,
I'm happy
thank
to be
you.
here.
Well, we love having you. And, we can do some conversations about artists, about other artists. So we're the lot we can. Ladies and gentlemen, you know my name, and my guest is Dan Slyker, who is an amazing human being. His wife says he's very handsome. That's what I've heard. Her name is Heidi, right? What's your wife's name?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. I pay her
And
well to say those things.
so we'll see you folks soon, and these shows will be out in a little while. So just keep an eye on my YouTube channel for them. And Dan, thank you for being here today. We
Thank you for
appreciate
having me.
it so much. God bless you, folks. Talk to you soon.